You also were covering the crisis in 2008, huge crisis. And you were analyzing what was happening that time. And as I understood well, there was an important role of these cartels who was trading with drugs in this financial crisis. Can you explain us this?
Well, you actually have to go back a little bit further. You have to go back to the British policy of creating the entire offshore banking operation in the Caribbean, where suddenly you have the ability to accumulate huge pools of money outside the control of governments that could be used for terrorism, that could be used for drug money laundering, that could be used for all sorts of nefarious kinds of activities. And that's the kind of quintessential aspect of an imperial system, where you want to have supranational or extranational institutions that are above nations and that can be used to attack nations, because the centerpiece of an imperial policy is they don't like national sovereignty. They don't like any sovereign nations, whatever their political complexion may be. And so whether it's terrorism, whether it's these offshore money laundering kinds of operations, psychological warfare being carried out by international institutions, the imposition, again, of supranational policies like free trade or green climate policies above nations. That's the characteristic of empire.
How was this global world order built from 1945?
Well, I think you have to go back a little bit earlier. You have to go back to the origin of the British Empire. And again, if you look at the characteristics of the British Empire, which we Americans know very much because we fought an American Revolution against them, there are institutions like the Bank of England, a private central bank which controls how the currency and credit of a country is deployed. Not the government, but a private central bank, or the British East India Company, which trafficked in slaves, in drugs, and so on. Those are the institutions of empire that we fought against. And what the American Republic created was really the first sovereign nation which had a sovereign economy. In other words, the economy was created under Alexander Hamilton to protect the nation, protect the producers, protect the people from these international financiers. And throughout, the last 200 years, what you've seen is the British Empire trying to reestablish this private financier operation. They made big strides in 1913 when we surrendered and created the Federal Reserve. And then you referenced the post-war period. The breaking point then was 1971, when the dollar was under British attack. Richard Nixon took the dollar off the gold reserve standard. And essentially, that was the first step in the United States really completely surrendering its economic sovereignty to this globalist financier elite. And it's been downhill since then until Donald Trump came along.
What has changed after 2008, or everything has stayed the same?
Well, I would say that it was like the cancer metastasizing, because what we saw in 2008 was the natural collapse of a system which was based on pure speculation, and speculation which was constantly undermining the productive capacities of a nation. I often compare it to a gigantic parasite on top of a little dog. That's your financial system. The little dog is your people, your productive capacity. And you reach a point where it collapses. Now, what should have happened in 2008 is we should have said, oh, well, that doesn't work. We've got to cut back on the speculators. And there was a fight in Congress in 2009, 2010 to go back to a more sane form of financial regulation so these speculators could not get out of control. We lost that fight, and the speculative bubble has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. I will say that the new Treasury Secretary and the proposed Federal Reserve Chairman have been very clear on record they want to reverse that.
Yes, and also you investigated that they used this offshore money, exactly money from trade of drugs, to sanate lots of banks and financial system in Wall Street.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, there's a very important speech. I can't remember the year right now, sometime in the last decade. The Russian drug czar gave a speech at the United Nations. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was very clear. He said, if it were not for these illegal drug money flows, the major banking institutions would have collapsed after 2008. So they rely on this. This is their system.
That means we saved exactly our world economy was saved by the drug money.
Well, I wish it was the economy, but it was the world banking system that was saved by the drug money. The actual economy of our nation and other nations continued to suffer, and until now, when you actually have a challenge to this kind of globalist system, again, where powerful international banks and the institutions that protect them have more power than nations. And when you look at the recent speeches this administration has given at Davos and at Munich, they are reestablishing the principle of national sovereignty for everybody, not just for the United States.